posting this because I honestly don't know what else to do at this point. Maybe someone here has experienced something similar, or maybe I'm just losing my mind. Either way, I need to get this out there. I'm a graduate student at a mid-sized university in the Midwest, working on my master's in library science. Pretty boring stuff, I know, but it's always been my thing. I've been here for 2 years now, and I thought I knew the campus pretty well. The library where I work as a research assistant has been under construction since last spring. They're renovating the entire east wing, so half the building is a maze of plastic sheeting, scaffolding, and noise. About 3 weeks ago, I started noticing little things. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, or my imagination running wild from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. You know how grad school is. It started with my laptop. I'd leave it in the same spot every day in the graduate study room. 3rd floor, corner desk by the window. I'm a creature of habit, I guess. My mom always said I was obsessive about keeping things in their exact place. Probably because I moved around so much as a kid when my dad was in the military. Anyway, I'd come back from lunch or a bathroom break, and my laptop would be angled differently. Just slightly, like someone had moved it and tried to put it back exactly where it was, but couldn't quite manage it. Then there were the browser tabs. I always keep my research organized in specific tabs: historical archives, academic databases, my thesis notes. I'd come back to find new tabs open, random ones, local news sites, the university staff directory, even my own social media profiles that I definitely hadn't opened. At first, I thought maybe I was just clicking things accidentally, but I'm pretty careful about that stuff. The construction noise was constant during the day, which made it hard to concentrate. Jackhammers, power tools, workers shouting to each other. But around 6 p.m., everything would go quiet. The workers would pack up and leave, and the library would get that eerie stillness that big buildings have after hours. I usually stayed until 9 or 10, since I did my best work when it was quiet. That's when I started seeing him. Dr. Marcus Chen was the head of digital archives, and technically my supervisor for the research assistantship. He'd been at the university for about 15 years, and everyone respected him. Students loved his classes, faculty trusted his expertise, and the administration valued his grant-writing abilities. He was maybe 50, always impeccably dressed, spoke 3 languages fluently, the kind of professor who remembered everyone's names and asked about your family. I'd worked with him for over a year without any issues. He was professional, helpful, never made me uncomfortable, which is why it took me so long to realize what was happening. The first time I saw him after hours, I didn't think much of it. It was around 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I was heading to the bathroom on the 2nd floor. The construction area was dark, except for those harsh work lights they leave on for security. As I walked past the plastic sheeting, I saw a figure moving around in there with a flashlight. I assumed it was a security guard checking on something. But when I got back to my desk, I looked out the window and saw Dr. Chen walking across the parking lot to his car. Same navy blazer, same leather briefcase he always carried. I thought it was weird that he'd been working so late, but professors keep odd hours sometimes. The next week, it happened again. This time I was sure it was him in the construction area. I could see his silhouette clearly through the translucent plastic, the way he held his shoulders, his precise movements. But when I checked, his office light was off, and his car wasn't in his usual parking spot. I started paying more attention after that. Over the next few days, I noticed he always seemed to know exactly where I was and what I was working on. He'd make casual comments about my research that were just a little too specific. "How's that chapter on municipal records coming along?" when I'd never mentioned which chapter I was writing. find anything interesting in those 1943 City Council minutes, when I'd only accessed those files the night before, after he'd supposedly gone home. My thesis advisor had always told us to keep detailed research logs, so I had everything documented in a private Google Drive folder. I'd been careful about not sharing it with anyone. But somehow, Dr. Chen seemed to know exactly what I was finding and when I was finding it. Then my apartment started feeling wrong. I live in a converted house about 10 minutes from campus, split into 4 units. I've got the upstairs back apartment. 1 bedroom, decent Wi-Fi, cheap rent. I've lived there for 2 years without any problems. The landlord is this elderly guy who owns half the rental properties near campus, and he's pretty hands-off as long as you pay rent on time. Last Monday, I came home from the library around 10 p.m. As I was unlocking my door, I noticed the lock felt different, looser somehow, like it had been opened and closed a lot recently. I live alone, and I'm pretty security conscious. Those military brat habits die hard, so I always double-check that my door is locked when I leave. Inside, everything looked normal, but it felt wrong. You know that feeling when someone's been in your space, like the air is disturbed somehow? I couldn't put my finger on what was different, but something was. I started taking pictures of my apartment before I left each day. Nothing obvious, just wide shots of my living room and bedroom, so I could compare when I got back. The differences were subtle. A book moved slightly on the coffee table. My desk chair pushed in when I always left it pulled out. The bathroom door closed when I habitually left it cracked open. The really creepy part was my computer. I have a desktop set up in my bedroom for serious work, and I always shut it down completely when I leave. But I started finding it in sleep mode instead. The screen would wake up immediately when I moved the mouse, like someone had been using it recently. I checked my browser history, but it was clean. Too clean. Usually there's a mix of research sites, random YouTube videos, social media, the normal digital detritus of daily life. But it looked like someone had selectively deleted certain entries while leaving others to make it look normal. That's when I started thinking about Dr. Chen's area of expertise. Digital archives, database management. He literally taught courses on data recovery and digital forensics. If anyone would know how to access someone's computer without leaving obvious traces, it would be him. I installed a hidden camera app on an old phone and left it recording in my bedroom. The battery would last about 6 hours, so I'd start it before leaving for the library and check the footage when I got home. For 3 days, nothing. Just my empty apartment and the occasional shadow from cars passing outside. On Thursday, I got something. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. I was definitely at the library then. Thursday is when I always do my weekly research review with Dr. Chen. The footage showed my bedroom door opening slowly. A figure stepped inside, but stayed in the shadows near the door. They knew exactly where to stand to avoid being clearly visible, but I could see enough. The height, the build, the way they moved. It was definitely Dr. Chen. He spent about 20 minutes in my apartment. I could see him moving around, checking things, but the camera angle didn't capture exactly what he was doing. At one point, he sat at my computer. The screen lit up his face just enough for me to be absolutely certain it was him. When he left, he locked the door behind him. Perfectly. Like he'd done it many times before. I sat in my car in the library parking lot, watching this footage on my phone, and I felt physically sick. This man I'd worked with for over a year, who I'd trusted and respected, had been breaking into my apartment, watching me, going through my personal things. But what could I do? The video was grainy, shot from across the room. You could maybe identify him if you already knew who to look for, but it wouldn't hold up as evidence. And he was careful. No obvious signs of forced entry, nothing stolen, no physical harm done. I thought about going to the police, but what would I tell them? A professor I work with has been in my apartment, but nothing's missing, and I can't prove he doesn't have permission to be there. They'd think I was paranoid or making it up. The next day, Friday, Dr. Chen was perfectly normal during our weekly meeting. Professional, helpful, asking about my progress on the thesis. But there was something different in his eyes, like he knew that I knew. "You've been working hard lately," he said, as I was packing up my notes. "I hope you're taking care of yourself, getting enough sleep, feeling safe." The way he said safe made my skin crawl. "I'm fine," I managed to say. "Good. It's important to feel secure in your environment, both at work and at home." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You know, if you ever have any concerns about your living situation, I'd be happy to help you find somewhere more suitable." I left the library and drove straight to a hardware store. Bought new locks for my apartment, a security camera system, and a motion sensor alarm. Spent the entire weekend installing everything and changing all my passwords. But I know it's not over. This morning, I found a new tab open on my laptop. The university housing website, with listings for graduate student apartments. As if someone was researching where I might move next. He's still watching. Still waiting. And I don't know what he wants or how long this has been going on. The construction in the library is supposed to finish next month. All those dark spaces, all that plastic sheeting and scaffolding where someone could hide and watch. It'll all be gone. But I have a feeling that won't stop him. I've been thinking about transferring to another university. But what if he has connections there too? What if he follows me? What if this is just how my life is now? If anyone has any advice, I'm open to suggestions. But right now, I'm just trying to document everything and hope that if something happens to me, people will know who to look at. I guess I should go. I have to meet with Dr. Chen in an hour to discuss my thesis progress. Just another normal graduate student meeting with her advisor. At least, that's what it'll look like to everyone else. I'm sharing this story because my therapist said it might help with the nightmares. And honestly, I think other people should know what can happen out there. This happened 3 months ago, and I still can't drive at night without my hands shaking. My name's Jake, and I work as a traveling sales rep for a medical equipment company. I spend about half my time on the road, driving between hospitals and clinics across the Midwest. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and I've always been comfortable driving long distances. My dad was a trucker for 20 years before his back gave out, so I grew up around highways and truck stops. The night this happened, I was driving back from a client meeting in Springfield with my coworker Amy. She's been with the company for about 6 months. Recent college grad, smart as hell, but this was only her second overnight business trip. We decided to drive back together instead of flying to save the company some money, and honestly, I liked having the company on long drives. We left Springfield around 6 p.m. on a Tuesday in February. The weather forecast had mentioned possible storms, but nothing too serious. Light snow, maybe some freezing rain. I've driven through worse plenty of times. Amy was navigating using her phone while I drove my company car, a 2019 Honda Accord with good tires and a full tank of gas. We were taking Highway 54 north, a route I'd driven dozens of times. It's mostly rural, lots of farmland and small towns, but well maintained and usually pretty safe. About 2 hours into the drive, the snow started coming down harder than expected. Big, wet flakes that stuck to the windshield faster than the wipers could clear them. I slowed down to about 45 miles per hour and put on the hazard lights. "Maybe we should find a hotel for the night," Amy suggested, looking up from her phone. "The weather app says it's going to get worse." I was about to agree when all the lights went out. Not just the street lights. Everything. The few scattered houses we could see in the distance. The gas station signs in the town we just passed. Even the radio tower blinking light on the horizon. Complete darkness, except for our headlights cutting through the falling snow. "Power outage," I said, trying to sound calm. "Probably the storm knocked down some lines." Amy's phone screen lit up her face as she checked for signal. "I've got nothing. No bars at all." That should have been our first real warning sign. I'd driven this route in all kinds of weather, and there were cell towers every 10 or 15 miles. You might get weak signal, but not complete dead zones like this. I kept driving, figuring we'd hit the next town in about 20 minutes, and could wait out the worst of the storm there. The snow was getting heavier, and the wind had picked up enough to rock the car slightly. But the road was still passable, and I had plenty of experience with winter driving. That's when we saw the other car. It was pulled over on the shoulder about a quarter mile ahead, hazard lights blinking. As we got closer, I could see it was a dark SUV, maybe 10 years old, with someone standing beside it, waving their arms. "Looks like someone needs help," Amy said. I slowed down, but something felt off. The person was wearing dark clothes with no reflective gear, which seemed stupid for someone broken down on a highway at night. And their body language was wrong. Too energetic, too insistent. Most people stranded in a snowstorm look cold and worried, not like they're flagging down a taxi. "I don't like this," I said, but I was already pulling over. My dad had always taught me to help other drivers when you could, and it felt wrong to just drive past someone who might be in real trouble. I rolled down my window as the guy approached. He was probably in his 40s, wearing a heavy jacket and knit cap. At first glance, he looked normal enough. Just a guy having car trouble in bad weather. "Thank God you stopped," he said, leaning toward my window. "My car died and my phone's not working. Think you could give me a ride to the next town?" That's when I smelled the alcohol on his breath, strong enough to notice even in the cold air and falling snow. "What's wrong with your car?" I asked, not moving to unlock the doors. "Battery, I think. Just need to get somewhere warm and call for help." I glanced at Amy, who was staring at her phone screen. "Still no signal," she whispered. Something about the guy's story didn't add up. If his battery was dead, his hazard lights wouldn't be working, and his car was running. I could see exhaust coming from the tailpipe. "Sorry, man," I said. "We're not supposed to pick up strangers. Company policy. But when we get to the next town, I'll send someone back to check on you." His expression changed immediately. The friendly, desperate mask slipped, and underneath was something cold and calculating. "That's not very neighborly," he said, his voice different now. Harder. I started rolling up my window, but he grabbed the edge of it with both hands. "Hold on now. I think you misunderstood me." That's when I saw the knife in his right hand. Nothing fancy, just a regular kitchen knife, but it looked sharp, and he held it like he knew how to use it. "Amy," I said quietly, "put on your seatbelt." She looked up from her phone and saw the knife. I watched all the color drain from her face. "Here's what's going to happen," the guy said, still gripping my window. "You're going to unlock these doors, and I'm going to get in. Then we're going to drive somewhere quiet, and have a conversation about what you've got that might be valuable to me. My mind was racing. The car was still in drive with my foot on the brake. If I floored it, he might be able to hang on long enough to slash at me through the window. If I tried to roll the window up, he could stick the knife through the gap. "Take your time thinking it over," he said. "But don't take too long. This storm's getting worse, and I'm getting impatient." Amy was hyperventilating beside me. I could hear her trying to control her breathing the way they teach you in those workplace safety seminars. I'd taken a self-defense class a few years back, after my sister was mugged outside her apartment. The instructor had said, the most important thing was to never let someone take you to a second location. Whatever they planned to do to you, there would be worse than what they might do right here on the road. "Okay," I said. "Okay, just give me a second." I pretended to reach for the door lock button, but instead I grabbed the gear shift and yanked it into reverse while slamming on the gas. The car shot backward, and the guy lost his grip on the window. I could see him in the headlights, stumbling and swearing, but still holding the knife. "What are you doing?" Amy screamed. I spun the wheel and got us pointed forward again, but the guy was already running toward his SUV. I floored it, and our car fishtailed slightly on the snow before the traction control kicked in and we straightened out. In the rearview mirror, I could see headlights starting to follow us. "He's coming after us," Amy said, turning around to look back. The SUV was bigger and probably had better traction in the snow, but my car was newer and I had a head start. I pushed the speed up to about 60, which felt dangerous in these conditions, but seemed necessary. "Try your phone again," I said. Still nothing. Her voice was shaking. "Jake, what if he catches up to us?" I didn't have a good answer for that. The next town was still about 15 miles away, and we were driving through complete darkness except for our headlights. No other traffic, no houses with lights on, nowhere to turn for help. The SUV was gaining on us. I could see it getting closer every time I checked the mirror. My car was better on dry pavement, but in snow like this, his four-wheel drive was an advantage. "There," Amy said, pointing ahead. "Is that a building?" I could barely make out a structure through the snow. Looked like it might be a gas station or truck stop, but as we got closer, I could see it was dark like everything else. No lights, no signs of life. The SUV was maybe 100 yards behind us now, close enough that I could see it was dark blue or black, with a dent in the front bumper and what looked like a cracked windshield. I made a split-second decision and yanked the wheel to the right, pulling into the parking lot of the dark building. If I could get behind it or find somewhere to hide, maybe we could wait him out or find a back exit. But the parking lot was a sheet of ice under the snow, and the car immediately started sliding. I felt the back end come around, and suddenly we were spinning across the lot, completely out of control. We hit a snowbank with a crunch that threw us both forward against our seatbelts. The engine stalled, and for a moment, everything was silent, except for the wind and the sound of snow hitting the windshield. "Are you okay?" I asked Amy. "I think so. Are we stuck?" I tried to restart the car. The engine turned over, but when I put it in reverse, the wheels just spun uselessly. We were definitely stuck. The SUV pulled into the parking lot more carefully than we had, its headlights sweeping across the snow until they found us. Then it stopped about 50 feet away, engine running. For maybe 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. "Well, that was exciting," the guy called out as he walked toward us. He still had the knife, and now I could see he was smiling. "But now we're right back where we started, aren't we?" I looked around desperately. The building we'd ended up behind was some kind of roadside restaurant or diner, closed and dark. There were a few other cars in the lot, probably abandoned when the power went out, but they were all buried under snow. "Amy," I whispered, "when I say go, run for that building. Try to find a back door or somewhere to hide." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." The guy was getting closer, taking his time. He knew we were trapped. That's when we heard the sirens. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Just the wind or my ears ringing from the adrenaline. But the sound got louder and more distinct. Multiple vehicles, coming fast. The guy heard it too. He stopped walking and looked back toward the highway. "Shit," he said. The sirens were definitely getting closer. Then I saw flashing lights through the snow, red and blue, reflecting off the falling flakes. 3 state police cars came sliding into the parking lot, their emergency lights cutting through the darkness like strobes. They surrounded the SUV and our car, officers jumping out with flashlights and weapons drawn. "Drop the knife and get on the ground," one of them shouted. The guy looked around like he was thinking about running, but there was nowhere to go. After a few seconds, he dropped the knife and put his hands up. It turns out the power outage had affected about 6 counties, and the state police had set up roadblocks on all the major highways to help stranded motorists. They'd been patrolling this stretch of Highway 54 when they saw our cars racing through the storm and decided to investigate. The guy we'd encountered was named Dennis Murphy, and he had warrants out for armed robbery in 3 different states. The SUV he was driving was stolen from a parking lot in Springfield, probably taken while we were in our client meeting earlier that day. The police said we were lucky. Murphy had been involved in at least 4 similar incidents over the past year, targeting lone drivers or couples on isolated roads during bad weather. 2 of those encounters had ended with the victims being robbed and left stranded. 1 had ended worse. Amy and I gave our statements, and a tow truck pulled our car out of the snowbank. We ended up spending the night in a motel in the next town, waiting for the power to come back on and the roads to clear. I've thought about that night a lot over the past few months, about how quickly a routine drive turned dangerous, and how many small decisions led up to that moment. If we'd left Springfield an hour later, or taken a different route, or ignored the guy on the roadside, everything would have been different. Amy transferred to a different position that doesn't require travel about a month later. She said it wasn't because of what happened, but I know better. I don't blame her. As for me, I still do the same job, still drive the same routes, but I've made some changes. I carry a better flashlight, a portable phone charger, and a baseball bat in my trunk. I never stop for strangers on the road anymore, no matter how much they might need help. Maybe that makes me a bad person, but I figure staying alive is more important than being neighborly. The police told us that Murphy pled guilty to multiple charges and got sentenced to 15 years. He won't be getting out for a long time, but I know there are others like him out there, waiting for the next storm, the next power outage, the next opportunity. So I wanted to share this story as a warning. Trust your instincts. Don't stop for strangers. And remember that sometimes the people who need help the most are the ones trying to hurt you. I'm writing this because it's been 5 years, and I still think about what happened every single day. My therapist says sharing the story might help me process it. But honestly, I'm hoping someone else will read this and tell me I handled it right. Because I'm still not sure I did. My name is Sarah, and I work as a freelance photographer specializing in small-town festivals and local events. It's niche work, but it pays the bills, and I love capturing those moments when communities come together. I grew up in a town of about 3,000 people in rural Ohio, so I understand the rhythm of these places, how they come alive during summer festivals, and then settle into quiet routines when the tourists leave. In September 2019, I was hired to document the aftermath of Millbrook's annual Harvest Festival for their tourism board. Millbrook is one of those picture-perfect small towns in upstate New York that gets flooded with visitors during peak season, then becomes almost ghost-like once Labor Day passes. The job was to capture the authentic local life that returns when the crowds disappear. I brought 2 assistants with me, my friend Marcus, who handles my lighting equipment, and Jenny, a college student who helps with social media and organization. We'd worked together on maybe a dozen similar projects over the past 2 years, and we had a good system down. The town had about 1,200 permanent residents, with maybe 50 businesses clustered around a main street that looked like it belonged on a postcard. Classic small-town America. White church steeples, wraparound porches, local diner with checkered tablecloths. During festival season, the population would swell to nearly 10,000 with tourists, vendors, and seasonal workers. But when we arrived on that Tuesday in mid-September, the place felt almost abandoned. Half the shops were closed until next spring. The festival grounds were being dismantled, and you could walk down Main Street for 10 minutes without seeing another person. We were staying at the Millbrook Inn, a bed and breakfast run by an elderly couple named the Weatherbys. Nice people, but they seemed nervous about something from the moment we checked in. Mrs. Weatherby kept asking if we were sure we wanted to be out after dark taking pictures, and Mr. Weatherby mentioned more than once that some of the local kids get restless when there's nothing to do. The first few days went fine. We photographed the town workers cleaning up after the festival, local shop owners preparing for the quiet season, farmers bringing in the last of their harvest. Classic small-town stuff that would look great in tourism brochures. But I started noticing things. There was a group of teenagers, maybe 6 or 7 of them, who seemed to be everywhere we went. They'd hang out across the street from wherever we were shooting, not doing anything obvious, just watching. At first, I thought they were just curious about outsiders with professional camera equipment. The group seemed to be led by this kid, who couldn't have been more than 17. Tall, skinny, with that particular kind of small-town swagger that comes from being a big fish in a very small pond. The others followed his lead, laughing when he laughed, moving when he moved. By Thursday, their behavior was getting more pointed. They'd yell comments when we were trying to work. Nothing you could really complain about, but loud enough to disrupt our shoots. "Nice camera," or "you getting good pictures." Stuff that sounded friendly, but felt mocking. Marcus wanted to say something to them, but I told him to ignore it. I've dealt with territorial locals before, and usually they lose interest if you don't engage. I was wrong. Friday evening, we were shooting the sunset from the old covered bridge on the edge of town. It's a popular photo spot, featured in most of the tourism materials. We'd gotten permission from the town council, and everything was above board. The teenagers showed up around 7 p.m., just as the light was getting good. This time, they didn't stay across the street. They came right up to where we were working. "Hey, photographers!" the leader called out. I learned later his name was Tyler Brennan, and his father owned one of the larger farms outside town. "This is our spot." "We have permission to be here," Jenny said, which was a mistake. You don't engage with groups like this when you're outnumbered. "Permission from who?" Tyler asked, stepping closer. "From people who don't live here year-round?" The other kids spread out around us, not obviously threatening, but positioned so we couldn't easily leave. I started packing up the camera equipment. "We're just about finished anyway," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Yeah, you are finished, Tyler said. In fact, maybe you're finished in our whole town. That's when one of the other kids, a girl with bleached hair and too much eyeliner, stepped up to Jenny and got right in her face. "We don't like tourists," she said. "And we especially don't like tourists who think they can come here and take pictures of us like we're animals in a zoo." "We're not taking pictures of people without permission," Marcus said. "We're documenting the town." "Our town," Tyler said. "And we didn't give you permission." The situation was escalating fast. I could see it in their body language, the way they were positioning themselves, the edge in their voices. These kids were looking for trouble, and we were convenient targets. "Let's go," I said to Marcus and Jenny. We got what we needed. We started walking back toward town, carrying our equipment. The teenagers followed us, staying about 10 feet behind, making comments just loud enough for us to hear. "Maybe they should leave tonight," one of them said. "Yeah, before something happens to their fancy cameras," another replied. We made it back to the inn without any direct confrontation, but I could feel them watching us from across the street as we went inside. "Should we call the police?" Jenny asked once we were in the lobby. "And tell them what?" Marcus replied. "Some teenagers were rude to us?" He was right. They hadn't actually threatened us directly or touched us or our equipment. In a small town, especially one where these kids probably had family connections going back generations, complaining about local teenagers being unfriendly wouldn't get us anywhere. But I should have called anyway. Saturday was our last scheduled day of shooting. We had a few more locations to cover. Then we'd drive back to the city Sunday morning. I figured we could avoid the teenagers by staying in the busier parts of town and finishing up quickly. We were photographing the interior of the old grain mill around 2 p.m. when Tyler and his friends showed up again. This time, there were more of them. Maybe 10 or 12 kids, ranging from about 15 to 19 years old. "Still here?" Tyler asked, walking into the mill like he owned it. The mill was privately owned, but open to tourists during the season. We had permission from the owner, but with the kids surrounding us inside the building, those permissions felt pretty meaningless. "We're leaving tomorrow," I said. "That might be too late," the bleached blonde girl said. She was carrying a can of spray paint, which definitely hadn't been there before. "Too late for what?" Marcus asked. Instead of answering, Tyler walked over to where I had my camera bag sitting and kicked it. Not hard enough to damage anything, but hard enough to make his point. "Careful," he said. "Accidents happen." That's when I realized we were in real trouble. This wasn't just teenagers being obnoxious. They were planning something, and we were alone with them in a building where no one could hear us if we yelled for help. "We're leaving now," I said, moving toward my equipment. "No," Tyler said, stepping in front of me. "I don't think you are." Two of the other boys moved to block the exit. The rest of the group spread out around the mill's main floor, effectively trapping us in the center of the room. "What do you want?" Jenny asked. Her voice was shaking. "We want you to understand that you're not welcome here," Tyler said. "We want you to know that outsiders who come into our town and act like they own the place need to learn some respect." The girl with the bleached hair started shaking her spray paint can. The sound echoed off the mill's wooden walls. "Maybe we should decorate their fancy cameras," she said. "Give them something to remember us by." "Touch our equipment, and I'm calling the police," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. Tyler laughed. "Go ahead. Call my Uncle Dave. He's the deputy sheriff. Tell him his nephew is having a conversation with some rude tourists." That's when I understood how deep we were in trouble. In a town this small, everyone was related to everyone else. The local authorities probably wouldn't take our side against kids they'd known since birth. Look, I said. We're sorry if we offended anyone. We're just here to do a job, and then we'll leave. Oh, you'll leave, Tyler said. But first, you're going to delete every picture you took in our town. What? Every single digital file. We want to watch you do it. I stared at him. We'd taken hundreds of photos over the past 4 days. Professional work that I was being paid for. Hours of careful composition and lighting. We can't do that, I said. This is our job. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you came here, the blonde girl said. She walked over to Marcus's lighting kit and sprayed a long line of black paint across one of the reflectors. Stop, Jenny yelled. That's when things got physical. One of the boys grabbed Jenny's arm when she tried to move toward the damaged equipment. Marcus stepped forward to help her, and 2 more kids blocked his path. Someone pushed someone else, and suddenly everyone was shoving and yelling. In the chaos, I managed to grab my camera bag and back toward a side door I'd noticed earlier. But Tyler saw me moving and cut me off. Going somewhere? He asked. Behind him, I could see the blonde girl systematically destroying Marcus's lighting equipment with the spray paint, while 2 other kids held him back. Jenny was pressed against a wall, surrounded by 3 teenagers who were taking turns getting in her face and yelling at her. Please, I said to Tyler, just let us leave. We'll delete the photos. We won't come back. I don't believe you, he said. I think you'll go back to the city and tell everyone what awful people we are. Maybe write some bad reviews, ruin our reputation. We won't. I promise. He stepped closer, and I could smell cigarettes and cheap cologne. Here's what's going to happen, he said quietly. You're going to give me that camera, and I'm going to smash it. Then you and your friends are going to walk out of here and drive straight out of town. And if we ever see you back here, things will go much worse for you. I looked around the mill. Marcus was still being held back, and Jenny looked like she was about to cry. The other kids were all watching Tyler, waiting to see what he'd do next. That's when I made the decision that I still think about every day. Instead of handing over my camera, I raised it and started taking pictures. Tyler's face, surprised and angry. The kids holding Marcus. Jenny against the wall. The destroyed equipment. The spray paint. Everything. What the hell are you doing? Tyler yelled. Documenting this, I said, still shooting. Getting evidence. The flash was going off with every shot, lighting up the dim interior of the mill. The kids were shouting and moving toward me, but I kept shooting until Tyler grabbed the camera strap and yanked it away from me. Give me the memory card, he demanded. No. He raised the camera like he was going to smash it on the floor. The memory card, or I destroy this right now. I looked at Marcus and Jenny. They were both scared, and we were still outnumbered and trapped. But something in me had shifted. Maybe it was growing up in a small town myself. Maybe it was years of dealing with difficult clients, but I wasn't going to be bullied by a bunch of teenagers. Go ahead, I said. Destroy it. But those photos are already uploaded to the cloud. My insurance will cover the camera, and you'll be facing charges for destruction of property and assault. I was bluffing about the cloud backup. The mill didn't have Wi-Fi, but Tyler didn't know that. You're lying, he said, but I could hear uncertainty in his voice. Am I? You want to find out what happens when photos of local kids assaulting tourists start showing up online? The other teenagers were looking at Tyler, waiting for him to make the next move. But I could see him thinking it through, probably realizing that destroying our equipment wouldn't actually solve his problem if the evidence was already somewhere else. Let's go, I said to Marcus and Jenny. We're leaving. I walked toward the exit, half expecting Tyler to stop me. But he stepped aside, still holding my camera. "This isn't over," he said. "Yeah, it is," I replied. We walked out of the mill and straight to our car. I could see the teenagers following us, but they stayed back. 20 minutes later, we were packed and driving out of Millbrook. I never got my camera back, and I never got paid for the job. When I tried to file a police report in the next town over, they said I'd have to go back to Millbrook to press charges. When I called the Millbrook Police Department, Deputy Dave Brennan, Tyler's uncle, told me it sounded like a misunderstanding between kids, and that maybe I should consider it a lesson about respecting local customs. The tourism board never contacted me again, but about 6 months later, I got a message on my professional Facebook page from someone in Millbrook. They said Tyler Brennan had been arrested for assault after attacking a tourist family visiting the town for antiquing. Apparently, he developed a pattern of targeting outsiders, and eventually he picked on someone who fought back. He served 18 months in county jail and had to pay restitution to several people he'd harassed. Most of his friends got probation and community service. I still do small-town photography work, but I'm more careful now. I research the communities beforehand, make sure I have local contacts who can vouch for me, and I never work alone in isolated locations. I carry pepper spray and a backup phone, and I always file detailed itineraries with people who know where I am. Some people have told me I should have just given them the camera and left. Maybe they're right. Maybe avoiding confrontation would have been safer. But I think about what might have happened to the next outsiders who came to Millbrook if no one had ever stood up to those kids. How many other photographers or tourists or traveling salespeople might have been harassed or intimidated if Tyler and his friends had learned they could get away with it. I'm not saying I handled it perfectly. I'm not even saying I handled it well. But I stood my ground. And maybe that mattered. Or maybe I just got lucky that my bluff worked. Either way, I wanted to share this story because I think it's important for people to know that this kind of thing happens. Small towns aren't always the friendly, welcoming places they pretend to be in their tourism brochures. Sometimes the locals don't want you there, and sometimes they're willing to do something about it. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And don't let anyone convince you that harassment is just local custom. You have the right to be safe, no matter where you are.